Long time no see. I feel like I've been away for far too long. I am going to do this hashtag called Tarot Obsess, and I am guilty as charged. I have not seen anybody's videos on Tarot Obsess quite yet. But I read the questions, and I really liked the questions, so I'm going to go ahead and do this hashtag, and I'm gonna promptly watch everybody else's videos as soon as I get finished with mine, so I'm not influenced by anybody else's questions. And so I felt like that was the best way to go about this hashtag right this time around. So I already went ahead and pre-read some of the questions so I could be prepared, so I could just show you without any kind of shuffling behind me and all that stuff. So my first tarot deck, which is the first question, what was your first tarot deck? And my first tarot deck is the Robin Wood Tarot, and this is my first tarot deck, and look at how nice I was able to keep the box for, God, I have this deck since 2008-ish, so it's been around the block, and you can't even see it on camera. I tried to show people on camera before, but the edges actually kind of have almost a brown color, a used brown color. But it is a stunning deck. I couldn't ask a better tarot deck to be my first deck because it is so Rider-Waite, and it's very pretty for being a Rider-Waite clone. And it also has these crystals on the wands, and it looked very new agey, and it very, very much suited me when I was at the beginning of my tarot journey, and I just really love this deck. It really is a special deck, and it's still a deck that is near and dear to my heart, and I still have to save money to get the guidebook that goes with this deck, you know, that separate guidebook that they released recently about this deck. So I am trying to save up money so I can have the guidebook to one of my favorite decks of all time. So that's the Robin Wood Tarot. Question number 2 is, what is your current favorite tarot deck? Oh, this one is kind of interesting because my current favorite tarot deck has to be the Wild Unknown. I keep getting this name wrong with this deck. I keep calling it the Wild and Unknown Tarot, even though it's the Wild Unknown Tarot. I am just a goober son. But the reason why this is currently my favorite tarot deck is because I have the third edition, the mass-produced edition in my travel wallet or my purse or my bag right now. And the reason why this one is my favorite tarot deck is because I've been doing a lot of Samhain work. I've been doing a lot of energy work. I've been doing a lot of what other kind of work I've been doing that would be profound? Like, why would I choose the Wild Unknown out of all my tarot decks? I don't know. It does Beyond the Veil ratings very well, and right now I've been very there with the Samhain time of the year, even though it's way past Samhain now. It's the 15th of November or something like that, and it's Thanksgiving like next week or something like that. I don't know. This has been a really healing deck for me, and I've been just working with it, and it actually has been very good. I'm been trying to go back into my tarot deck collection, and I've been trying to go back into my tarot decks and trying to pull out the decks that I've obsessively, compulsively bought and just never used. I bought it and I worked with it for a day or two when I first got it, and then I just never went back to it because I was buying the next deck, you know, that kind of stuff. So I've been really working hard because I've been on a deck buying band to really connect with the deck versus just kind of like a handshake. It's with decks, and so this has been one of the decks that I was formally introduced to, but I just feel like that it's a proper time now to really get to know a deck to see if I want it to keep it or I want to get rid of it. And this deck of course, is one of those keeper decks that I'm never going to get rid of, but it's definitely one of those things that it's nice to get to know the deck more than just being superficial. I hope that answers that question for number 2 without getting too long. Okay, question number 3. What is your most used tarot deck? And I had to think about this one for a second because I'm like, oh, I have used a lot of tarot decks. And I have a lot of most used tarot decks. Like, for an example, I would say Prague. I would have said maybe the Robinwood Tarot because I've been working with that one for over 8 years or so before I started to collect tarot like I am a tarot collector now. And I went ahead and said, well, the Japri Tarot was one of my soul decks at one point. And before the Kelly from Truth and Story got her hands on this and everybody had a fandom around this deck, this was one of my go-to decks for readings with my family members. And this was also, in a way, a secondary deck that I had for myself for a very long time before the fandom really started and kick off. And it wasn't really when I started to be involved with the Kelly and Truth and Story and the tarot community, that I started to branch away from having intimate decks. So, like, it's getting into a different VR topic, but I was actually, at one point in my tarot journey, a lot more intimate with my decks and a lot more, had more decks that I really liked versus I sort of kind of like it, so I'm gonna get it kind of thing. So, and I got a lot of tarot decks behind me, but I do feel like there was a lot of them that I was compulsively buying, not because I was buying, because I really felt drawn to the deck. I feel like there is a difference, and this one was one that I was drawn to because I saw it on Al Moon's channel, and I just saw how artsy it is and how the images were, and I just kind of said to myself, that reminds me of my acrylic paintings, history, my art fandom and stuff like that, and this is definitely a deck that I feel drawn to. And I've actually done hardcore readings with this and hardcore connecting with this deck for, I would say, at least a full year and a half. This deck was definitely on my shelf from like 2014 to 2015 as my go-to deck, or as my soul deck, or whatever the case is. And then I saw Prague, and then I saw, some of my other decks back here and all that stuff. And the rest is history. So I'm going to go ahead with this, the Japri Tarot as my most used deck for this question. Alright, I'm going to just try to kick them out because it's getting be a very lengthy video already, and I'm already on question 4. Okay, so what is your least used tarot deck? And that would be the Circus cards. It's the cardstock. I feel like they should have used a different publisher. This deck is quite literally as thin as paper. If you saw the cardstock here, it's very thin. I think it's only like... It's quite literally thin as paper. I don't know how else to describe it. I feel like the publisher, it should be published through a different company. The cardstock is lacking. For an indie deck, and it was an expensive indie deck too, it deserved a better cardstock. And I don't know how to fix this one yet still. I don't know. I don't know if I was going to connect with this one either. So that is the Circus cards, and I still have to review it on my channel sometime. Okay, so some of these questions are a little bit shorter, so hopefully I can speed through them. Okay, question number 5. How did you learn to read the tarot? I used the little white booklet and my Robinwood deck as my first book, or my first little book of how I learned how to read tarot. And then it wasn't until I bought the Llewellyn Tarot in 2013, 2014. It wasn't around, or maybe it was 2012. I don't even remember when I bought the Llewellyn Tarot, but it wasn't around that time that I bought the Llewellyn Tarot, and I had the big guidebook for the Llewellyn Tarot as my guidebook that I really learned the tarot in a more meaty sense. But I first started reading tarot using a little white book. So it is possible for those who feel like you only have a little white book to learn tarot. I did it. I've talked to some other people in our tarot community, and they've done it too. So don't feel too ashamed that if that's all you had was a little white book to learn tarot from. All right, and so number 6. What do you use tarot for? Okay, what I use tarot for is everything from predicting the weather to self-healing work to client readings to do Beyond the Realm work, which I was talking about the Wild Unknown, like I'm working with Beyond the Realm, past life readings, etc., etc., etc. And I should say what I don't use tarot for is predicting lottery tickets. I try not to predict politician polls or anything like that. And even then, if I do that, I do it for myself and not for others. And so I'm not sharing that kind of information around, because I'm not saying that nobody wants to know that, but it's just kind of one of those things that's not something you should be using the tarot for your own personal gains. That's one thing that I feel like the tarot should not be used for. And that's going to be my answer to that question. I don't use it for my personal gains. Okay, how do you read the tarot? Intuition or book? I use a little bit of both. I am both an intuitive reader and a by the book reader. I don't use the book anymore, but I do use the book when I use decks like the Mary L guidebook. Some of the decks that I have that in my collection that does kind of feel like the book and the deck go hand in hand, you know, that kind of stuff. So I will use the book if the deck and the guidebook kind of goes hand in hand with each other in that sort of way. But for the most part, I'm by the book, and I use my intuitive hits to figure out what it is that I am reading, basically. Do you use spreads? I use a lot of my own personal spreads, and I usually do spreads on the fly. I don't usually have a pre-set in my spread in my head. I kind of make up a spread as I do the reading, which is actually quite interesting, and I think I might have to do a video on that on my channel too. Gosh, I got a list. Do you mix tarot with other divination systems? Yes, I do. I use runes and tarot. I use tarot and oracles. Although I have not been mixing tarot and other divinatory systems recently. I was doing it a lot more when I was really studying one system with the other, or one system, just trying to get to know a system, basically. But I need to do that more often, because I really love reading tarot and oracle decks together, and I really love reading tarot and runes together, and I just miss doing that, and it's kind of fun, and it actually gets sometimes a more in-depth reading. So I do want to do more of that in the future, and I probably should get back into doing that again. What makes a great tarot deck? And this is question number 10. What makes a great tarot deck? I feel like what makes a really great tarot deck is I think a lot of things have to make a really good tarot deck, and this kind of gets into its own video too, like what do I look for in a tarot deck. Sometimes I have specific cards that I really, really look for, but I think as a whole, to answer this question as a whole, what makes a really great tarot deck is something that I think is artistically pleasing just as much as it can hit an intuitive part of somebody's soul. I feel like that a tarot deck, to be a tarot deck, it has to hit that intuitive spot in somebody's soul. For an example, some decks do it better than others. I feel like an artist's intentions does come out in a tarot deck. I'm a very intuitive person, so when I say that I feel like an artist's intentions for like that meaning fate or that meaning this or meaning that. Like for an example, I feel the love that an artist or you can feel the love of an artist's intention in the card. And I feel like when you don't feel that artist's love and that intention for that card and that card meeting, you don't get a good tarot deck. You could have but you really could use flashcards as a tarot deck. So what does make a good tarot deck? It's just something to think about. I feel like for me, it's an artist's intentions or intention setting. It makes a great tarot deck. Question number 11. How important to you is a deck sticking to the tarot system, or I would have to say Rider-Waite system or thought system is a tarot system. How important is a deck to stick to a tarot system? So that, to me, is a very vague question in itself, but I'm going to go back and throw it back at question number 10 for me. What makes a great tarot deck? And for me, tarot is like an oracle deck in a way, but what makes a really good tarot deck and what and also to answer the question number 11 is I got the questions right here. I'm sorry about that. How important is that a tarot deck sticks to the tarot system? It doesn't have to stick to a tarot system. Like for an example, the Gaia Tarot or the Dreams of Gaia Tarot. That's what it was. Dreams of Gaia Tarot by Raven Phelan. I do not have this deck on hand to show off to everybody, but it was definitely branches off the tarot system. It does not follow the tarot structure. And I don't think it was important. I think a lot of people love it and still use it, and they use it more as an oracle deck, or I don't know, it's more like a whatever deck. I don't want to call it a whatever deck, but she expanded the majors arcana in her deck, and it worked for her deck because I could tell from people's reactions and people working with that deck that it did not hinder that deck being used. And that's what I'm going to use as far as that question. I personally don't have the Dreams of Gaia Tarot for personal reasons. I don't connect with the images, but for me personally, it does not hinder me using a deck if it doesn't follow strictly the tarot system either. I even use extra cards in my tarot deck. Like, for an example, if they come with 2 lovers cards, like Baba Studio does sometimes to time, I'll still use both lovers in my deck, or both sun cards in my deck, or whatever the case is, or the extra card, or the bonus card that tarot deck creators throw out in their decks every now and then too. I'll use those too, because I feel like it brings something extra sometimes, an extra meaning. So, hopefully that answers that question without being too complicated and whew. Okay, 12. Do you have any backup decks? I do have backup decks of some of my favorite decks. Like, for an example, I have a backup deck of the Tarot Prague. I do have a back deck of the Wild Unknown. What else do I have a backup deck of? I have many copies of the Thoth deck and backup decks of the Thoth deck and many varieties of the Thoth deck. I have... What else do I have a backup deck of? Well, I'm just throwing out some of them, but mostly I have a lot of backup decks. Rider-Waite decks, yeah. Rider-Waite decks, Thoth decks, Prague, Wild Unknown. Some of my more favorite decks I will buy a backup deck for, but it is only for special circumstances. Like, for an example, when I bought a backup deck for the Mary L Tarot, I trimmed one of my Mary L deck, and then I wanted a backup deck that had the borders again, because I had the Mary L deck with the borders before, and now that I've trimmed it, I had both versions that I could work with. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. Do you have any unusual and unique decks? And this is when I pre-read the questions and pulled one out. And the one I'm going to pull out today, I have a lot of oddity decks. And I was talking about this in one of my live chats. And this might be my a prompt that I might throw out to all of you is, what is, top 5 oddity decks or something like that. I will probably try to do one here in a little bit. Like, what are your oddity decks? Do you have any oddity decks? And what consists to me of an oddity deck is something that's kind of branches from the Rider-Waite-Smith system, and that it's like, how the freak do you read with that kind of deck? And that would consist of an oddity deck to me, or a definition of an oddity deck. And what's unusual about this deck, and it's kind of an oddity deck or an unusual, unique tarot deck, is I don't know if humanity is able to fully understand the transformations of this age. If it is able to live with the conflict between spirit and technology, between oneself and the madness which surrounds it. Please convince me that I'm wrong. The threshold of the third millennium has been crossed. And so I thought it was a cool deck because I saw it on, what was it? I saw it on Sacred Seeds channel, I think. And here's the back. It's a Low Scarabeo deck. And here's, the majors are so beautiful in this deck. But this is such a cool oddity deck. I really love some of the images. I really love the blend of technological numbers, grids, and even the website codes and things like that mixed in with like I forgot which deck this is. I think that I would have to rewatch Sacred Seeds video to say it's like the one of these old classic decks, and it's just such a unique deck. I really like this deck. It's very unique, and it's really cool, and it takes really cool Instagram pictures in a hospital. Oh my goodness. It's a cool oddity deck. Okay, counting down. Question number 14. What is your current deck crush? And I'm going to do, I think this question is kind of gearing towards a deck that you don't have. My current deck crush is probably the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. I am kind of crushing over that right now, and I've been kind of eyeing it, going, I maybe want to get this. Oh, and my budget kind of frees up, and I'm also kind of crushing over some of those new Llewellyn decks too. Yeah, and I don't usually crush over those kind of Llewellyn decks. Like the manga tarot looked really cool. I don't usually do manga and things like that, but I, for some reason, felt drawn to that deck, and the Raven's Prophecy for sure is a deck that I feel very drawn to. So that would be my current deck crush. Do you read with reversals? I did for the first few years of my tarot journey. I actually read reversals all up until about 2014-ish. And because why I stopped reading reversals. Okay, this would be good. A quick answer to this question. The reason why I stopped reading reversals is because I felt like when I was reading reversals with some of the cards, I was starting to get more in tune with the tarot to the point where it was like I had a reversal on one card and I felt intuitively that should have been upright, basically. But I might explore this again in the future, is have my cards all shuffle, and then as I'm going through the readings, make my reversals as I go, because I do that. I read an upright card, and sometimes I feel like that should be reversed, and the reason why I stopped doing reversals because I felt like some of the reversal cards should have been upright. So I might play with that a little bit, to be quite honest. So I might play with doing doing what I normally do with no reversals and shuffle a deck, and then as I go through the tarot reading or the tarot cards, I will make a reversal as I go. So maybe that's something I'll experiment with again in the future. And the last question, number 16. If you could only use one deck, which would it be? This is a hard one for me Because, if you notice, I have a big collection. And if you follow my channel, I do have a very big deck collection. But I think if I could only use one deck, and which would it be? I'd probably go back to my roots. And I think that if all my decks burnt down to the ground and your house was on fire, the crazy scenario, whatever, that crazy scenario were to happen, I probably would grab my Terra Prog deck. I think I would. At least that one deck, because it's the first edition of Terra Prog. It's the... has that... that kind of thing, and it's... I love this tower card. He's so dramatic. Oh my god, that just says tower to me. But this is the deck that, if, like you said, if the house burned down or something like that, and you could only grab one deck from the shelf, I would panic and grab this one first before my other decks. The Terra Prog. I try not to answer those kind of questions either, because I honestly love all my decks, and I don't have one particular soul deck, even though I have said it was Mary L. Tarot would be like that #1 soul deck for me. But this is, if you were talking about the scenario of your house burning down, and you only could grab one tarot deck, this is the one I would probably grab, because it was not easy to get the tarot deck for the price that I got for it, and it is one of my favorite forever decks. So, Terra Prog, first edition, for the win. So that is the Tarot Obsessed hashtag. I'm going to be watching everybody's hashtag, and like and comment down below. I've not been using my Patreon pages as much as I want to because of Judith, but I'm still working out the kinks with that. So I still have it as a link down below and everything like that in my videos. Check it out if you want to. I hope that I could just start picking it back up again and figure out the kinks and the rewards and things like that to make people think that that would be something that they would be aspiring to look for, or maybe better video content or whatever. Who knows? We will figure out the kinks of that later, but as far as everything, I love you all. Kisses, hugs, blessed be.